Have you ever met one of those people who just can't be stopped? It's like they're unstoppable.
Yeah, I have.
Me too.
What's their mystique?
Nothing stops these people.
Don't stop.
Welcome to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. You're about to meet some of the most amazing people.
Stop. Don't stop.
They've accomplished their goals despite insurmountable odds. They beat adversity, physical hardship, and traumatic events, and emerged triumphantly. They're people just like you and me, and they're winners. Are you unstoppable? Here's Frankie to show you how.
Well, hello there, and welcome to Mission Unstoppable on this beautiful sunny summer day. Today we are going on a mission where we will cross the globe and look at social entrepreneurship in action. We'll look at sustainability, have a conversation about strategy with our guest guide who is more than qualified for the task. He was a guest lecturer at the St. Petersburg Polytechnical University in Russia, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Hanover in Germany, taught at the University of Bradford School of Management in the UK, was a professor at the Ted Rogers School of Management at Ryerson University in Toronto, considered to be one of Canada's preeminent business schools. And today he is a professor at Nipissing University School of Business, where he teaches strategy and decision-making courses. However, our guest isn't just a theorist, I should say, in the classroom. He has 18 years of experience working directly with entrepreneurs within startups and small to medium enterprises across various sectors and countries. This includes 7 years of international social entrepreneurship experience, and in this role he co-founded 2 nonprofit organizations that provide impoverished children in rural Nepal with educational subsidies, engaged in social entrepreneurship, and started the World Pathfinders Children's Fund. Please welcome Dr. Jeffrey Overall. Hello there.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. I want to say thank you for coming. You have an incredible pedigree and resume of amazing achievements, and I wanted to get a sense of you before you came on the show. So I looked up what your past students had to say about you. Did you know you have a 4.9 rating? I don't know where that one went. And your students say that you're inspirational, hilarious, give amazing lectures, you're tough but fair, approachable and respectful. And every single review I read said you were the best professor I ever had. Now, I know education obviously is important to you. That's obvious. So, Professor, school's in session. Tell us about, your journey to social impact.
Well, it's been a life journey, a long journey, and it's with a lot of the experiences that I've had with working in industry, in the profit sector, and looking at what the motivations behind strategies in that industry are, and then coupled with my travel experience and then visiting other countries that are quite less fortunate than we are in the industrial North America, Western Europe, areas of the world, and seeing how people live in those countries, which is in stark contrast to what we experience on a day-to-day scale. I wanted to pair my experiences in industry and then try to address some of the problems that I've noted in other countries, such as Nepal, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Now, this show is as much about what you do as who you are, because we want to inspire folks who are listening to take their own journey and, become unstoppable as well. You were Canadian. You grew up, you told me, in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And I think Canadians have, certainly have a different view maybe on different cultures. We're, seeing that multiculturalism is something that we care deeply about. When growing up, though, was your family or people around you, the idea of giving, of looking beyond, the borders to helping, was that something that you grew up with or something that you acquired?
I would say that it was living in a multicultural society as Canada is, and being aware of what's happening in a global context. That was something that was always, discussed at home, and it was more when you hear about it as a child, you sometimes get a little bit desensitized because you're not necessarily experiencing it. But once you go and travel and see these things on your own, then they become more salient and more real, I guess you could say. And then once you've experienced it, then it becomes something that's part of you, as opposed to just a conversation that you've had and maybe seen something on TV or something to that effect.
Like, I don't know if you're of that generation where your parents said this, but I certainly am. And it was, eat your food, children in Africa are starving.
Oh, of course.
What did that have to do with them? They're still starving if I eat, but, something to say. And there was that reference, but nothing was ever, said, let's send them food or something. Let's do something about this.
Well, that's just it. It comes to how do we address this issue? We've all grown up with seeing the kids with flies on their cheeks on TV, and it's just, okay, well, what do we do about it? And of course, you can sponsor the children and things like that, but being critical and reading things in the media, you don't know where your money's going.
Right.
And so that becomes an issue, and it is an important issue that we've encountered in the social enterprise sector as well. Is where's the transparency, which becomes a problem. Yeah.
Well, we said that we're going to have a look at education and sustainability, and I think we're the entrepreneurship and the strategy come together is in the World Pathfinder Children's Fund, that you co-founded. Tell us about Nepal. Tell us about, the high illiteracy rates and child labor. Give us a sense of what it's like for these kids and why we should care.
Okay, well, Nepal, for those that don't know, it's an extremely beautiful country. It's very attractive for tourists to travel to. The Himalayas, Mount Everest is there. There's beautiful forests and things like that. It's a very small country. It's nestled between two economic giants, India and China. It's an extremely, from a cultural perspective, very old society, 11,000 years old. It was the birthplace of Buddha and the Buddhist religion. But there's also lots of economic issues associated with the country. It's one of the least developed countries in the world. The per capita GDP is $1,200 US, wow. And 25% of the population live below the poverty line. And when you look at the economic indicators of illiteracy, 66% of men are illiterate, while 90% of women are illiterate. So just based on those numbers alone, you can see that there are some gender discrimination issues. And they're the second highest level of child poverty. So from the research that we've done, there's basically 2 million children under the age of 14 that are actively engaged in the labor force. And because they're young and vulnerable and don't have really a lot of experience, they face inhumane working conditions. If they're paid anything at all, it's extremely low. Many of them, as a result of their vulnerability, are trafficked into the sex trade. And there are basically 12,000 Nepalese children per year that enter this horrendous industry. That's 33 children per day. So we're focused on trying to stop this supply of children entering this horrific industry, and to do that is to try to keep them in school so they're not forced to drop out and try to get resources for their family in different ways.
So are these what kind of jobs would these kids be doing, and for whom?
Usually the children travel from the rural parts of the country. They'll go to the major cities such as Kathmandu, and a lot of the time they will work in factories. They might be involved in some heavy labor, construction, and things like that. But most of it is factory type environment work.
And so they'll leave their families to go and live, like, do they live in like dorms or something?
They often, they're most of the time they end up living on the street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not unusual to see, girls not being educated. That's one of the United Nations global goals, is to see that, girls all get educated around the world. The sex trade is definitely something that's very sad but inevitable, I guess, to see. The education, though, when we educate these children, and I'm assuming, I know that it costs money. Like in many countries, parents are forced to choose which child is going to get educated because they only have enough money to educate one. Is that the case there?
Well, in Nepal, and especially in the rural areas of the country, is that culturally it looks at the issue of people have a lot of children because in their society the children take care of the parents when they get older, so they take the view that if they have a lot of children there'll be more people available for me when I'm older to take care of them. So they have 5-6 children and things like that, so they already don't have enough to send really any of them to school. So the issue comes to the point where they look at their daughters and they know that they'll be married off at some point in time, so they take the view that they'll become the responsibility of their husbands. So paying for their education becomes a frivolous expenditure in their minds, so they won't educate their daughters.
And do they have the same view on girls as the Chinese did?
What would
what?
that?
I'm gonna. What would that be? Let's stop there because we are going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the World Pathfinder Children's Fund, Nepal, the 2 million kids who are out there, or the 12,000 Nepalese children who are out working under the age of 14, which is very sad to hear. When we come back, stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. You're going to want to hear the rest of this. Dr. Jeffrey Overall is our guest today.
Stop.
That's right, don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
Secret Cuisines and Sacred Rituals is a quest, a place, and a feast. Join host Vilasi Venkatachalam every week to explore myths, mystique, old medicine, and brilliant modern solutions through a dazzling kaleidoscope of cuisines, cultures, and cures. This is the place where tribes gather, strangers and familiars, to be memory keepers and makers of our evolving, enduring, evergreen, spoken legacy of wisdom and ingenuity. In Vilasi's words, when we do old things in new ways and new things in old ways, we paint with an inspired palette, weave our own healing traditions, and become our own guru. Vilasi is a troubadour of secret cuisines and sacred rituals. She collects stories of wisdom, ingenuity, and grit. She believes wellness and transformation happen when you stand at the threshold of delight and discovery. She displays her hidden penchant for drama when she leads the safari at the supper club. Her favorite pastime is to extol the marvels of cuisines, cultures, and cures. To her audience in workplaces, seminars, and salons, her mantra is, be your own guru. She is a biochemist, botanist, and alchemist who likes to churn delightful, useful things from a brew of art and science, ancient and evolving, old medicine, and new cures. Join Vilasi every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here on the Woohoo Radio Network.
It's words you never heard.
Harvey Mackay, author of the best-selling book, Use Your Head to Get Your Foot in the Door, includes job search secrets no one else will tell you. Harvey is a true ideopraxist. That's a person who puts ideas into practice. Harvey admits landing the right job can be more difficult than the job itself. And successful people can't have chronophobia. That's the fear of work. But in these economic times, it can be a necessity to make money any way you can. What's a word for using any means to make money? Homo de quinquis. So what's the best job to have? Will Rogers once said, the best job in the country is the vice president. All he has to do is get up every day and ask, how is the president?
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my new app, Too Funny for Word.
Okay, and we're back at Mission Unstoppable. I'm your host, Frankie Picasso, and my guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Overall. And we are in Nepal at the moment, and we are talking about the World Pathfinder Children's Fund, how he became involved in Nepal and why he went there to start this. And let's get back to him. So, Dr. Overall.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you're here with us. We were talking about, the level of poverty and the 2 million children who are in the workforce. The education. How much does it cost to educate a child?
It's $50 per year to educate a child in Nepal.
To us it doesn't sound very expensive, but like you said, the annual income, yearly income is $1,200. Did I get that right?
That's the per capita GDP income.
Wow.
So a colleague of mine, just to, I guess, put that a little bit in context, is a colleague of mine who was a professor at a university in Nepal, makes $3,000 per year.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
wow.
That's, I guess you could put that into the upper middle class category. So upper middle class people make around $3,000 per year.
So that makes educating children exorbitantly expensive.
Yeah.
Why is it so expensive?
Well, the problem is that at least in the rural parts of the country, it's the population is dispersed, so it's difficult to attract people to teach at these institutions. The population of students is quite low, so you also have to have administrators and teachers. So when you take all these overhead expenditures into consideration, that's why the cost is as high as it is. But when you look at it from our view and based on our income, based $50 is taking a friend out for lunch. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So once they're educated, what opportunities arise for them? Like where can they go and work?
Well, one of the first-generation students that we've have been assisting and has recently graduated, what they've been able to do with the household income is the child has graduated and they started working, and he's taken more of a entrepreneurial view, and he started his own trekking guide company.
Okay. Well, yeah. That's one of the things I did want to talk to you about because, we all know the Sherpas and used to take people up to Everest, and some of them have been up there maybe 30, 35 times at least. And now that, because I just watched a documentary, now that they're educated, they understand how they were taken advantage of, and they're starting to charge the right amount of money for these expeditions. And the Americans and the other people from around the world, are a little bit ticked off that they figured this out, that they've been being ripped off all these years. Good for them. It's very dangerous. So many of them die every year. What else, though? What do you like? Your thoughts on that? Let's go there.
Well, yeah, you're trekking through the parts of Nepal. It's you typically notice that the main sources of industry are around tourism. So you see that there are people that work in tourism, the locals, and then you do see that there's a lot of tourists that arrive there. And from my exchanges with some of the locals, it's that the people that travel to Nepal, they know that it's cheap for them to go. The infrastructure isn't that is quite poor, so they figure that they can pay minimal amounts, and then the people are exploited. But if you go to sustainable places, and when more and more people are becoming aware of what the cost should be charging, well, then the economy somewhat fixes itself, and people have to pay reasonable rates.
I love entrepreneurship. From way back, I've been an entrepreneur, and I just love the whole idea of it. But since you are a professor of entrepreneurship, why don't you explain to the rest of the world who's listening what we mean by that and the implications it has for these people and everybody, really. And it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, for sure.
No, it's definitely not for everyone, but I mean, from what entrepreneurship can do, and I am a major supporter in how entrepreneurship is vital to economies. Governments around the world are starting to realize this, and they're putting resources towards developing entrepreneurship, because it creates not only jobs but industries. It's sustainable. Governments don't really have to put money in infrastructure type projects. They just need to put some money towards creating awareness of the opportunities of entrepreneurship. But when you look at a country such as Nepal, it's something that could be very useful to developing their economy, but because the country is so poor just within from an economic standpoint, which as a result the government doesn't have the funding available to foster some of these projects. They have some money that they've put in small medium enterprise projects, and they are focused on training entrepreneurs. The problem is that in Nepal there's a negative connotation associated with entrepreneurship, and that somewhat comes back to the caste system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So with, I guess, the lower castes, those occupations, they're more merchants and things like that. So for those that are in the higher caste, they would think that entrepreneurial careers are reserved for those that are in a lower caste system, or a lower caste position, and then they would perceive that as something that is below them. Although the government's trying to, address some of these issues, it's part of the culture, and it has been, although the caste system is technically illegal now, people still follow it. So trying to change opinions that have been part of people's lives for a very long time is quite challenging.
Is that because they would follow the spice route and take their wares to different markets through the mountains over to China and different places? Is that why they would think that? I mean, you're an entrepreneur when you do that.
Well, basically, yeah. I mean, that's where essentially it all somewhat started. I mean, the highest castes are the priests and the academics, and then the one below that would be warriors and kings, and then I guess on the third rung down is where you have the merchants and the landowners. So these were the people, as you say, in the spice route that participated in a lot of the entrepreneurial type activities, which is extremely important, as we know, in developing an economy. But when you have a negative view towards it, it's difficult trying to get people to want to engage with it.
And there's also a negative economy in their country. They're going to have to look for customers outside of Nepal, I would think, in order to really make money.
That's just it. And the way that they try to do that is, their largest export is their tourism. Mm-hmm. So they're attracting people into their country, but because of the earthquake in 2015, that's been a bit of a challenge. I mean, from my perspective, the infrastructure in Nepal, if you're taking it through the lens of a North American or Western European view, the infrastructure is chaotic at the best of times. So you add a significant catastrophe with an earthquake, it's just going to be making it even more challenging.
Is there something they can export, like through the internet or something? Like, is there a way to export, or too expensive?
No, I mean, there's a free border between India and Nepal, so it's quite easy to ship products out of Nepal and into India. The problem is, it's just the infrastructure in the country for road and rail access is really bad, and it's a Himalayan country. It's landlocked, so it's very difficult with road access trying to get to the different parts of the country, because there's essentially one road that goes through the mountains. Labor is quite cheap, but then you run into issues with the hydroelectricity infrastructure. There's power outages that last 17 hours per day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They only have 6 hours of power.
I see a double-edged sword here. And we got 2 minutes before we go to break. So I'll ask the question, we'll talk about it, and then maybe we can answer it after.
Sure.
I want to talk about the World Pathfinder Children's, the schooling, the education, how you set that up for sustainability. Mm-hmm. But as we're talking, it comes to mind that as we educate these children, many of them are going to leave. They're going to have to leave if they want to get ahead in life. Other than, people coming to them, there's not much going out. So maybe they have to go out into the world, leaving their families. Is that something that does it worry them to educate their children because of this? Has that come up, or am I just off point?
No, I think that within the context of the rural parts of the country, which is where you would see the highest levels of poverty, these people, as I mentioned, are they're illiterate, so they don't have education really from a standardized governmental-run education, and they typically don't travel outside of their village. So a world view of holding that as a concern, where there's going to be a brain drain, isn't in their forefront of their mind. They're more concerned with trying to feed themselves every day. Okay.
Yeah. I want to talk about it a little bit more when we come back from our break, though. But that is, it's interesting. But the kids who are getting educated, I have to think are going to want to go, because once that mind has been expanded, it's kind of hard to rein it back in. Stick around. We're going on a commercial break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Mission Unstoppable Radio, and I'm your host, Frankie Picasso. Take care. Don't go anywhere.
Stop.
That's right. Don't stop listening. Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
Secret Cuisines and Sacred Rituals is a quest, a place, and a feast. Join host Vilasi Venkatachalam every week to explore myths, mystique, old medicine, and brilliant modern solutions through a dazzling kaleidoscope of cuisines, cultures, and cures. This is the place where tribes gather, strangers and familiars, to be memory keepers and makers of our evolving, enduring, evergreen, spoken legacy of wisdom and ingenuity. In Vilasi's words, when we do old things in new ways and new things in old ways, we paint with an inspired palette, weave our own healing traditions, and become our own guru. Vilasi is a troubadour of secret cuisines and sacred rituals. She collects stories of wisdom, ingenuity, and grit. She believes wellness and transformation happen when you stand at the threshold of delight and discovery. She displays her hidden penchant for drama when she leads the safari at the supper club. Her favorite pastime is to extol the marvels of cuisines, cultures, and cures. To her audience in workplaces, seminars, and salons, her mantra is, be your own guru. She is a biochemist, botanist, and alchemist who likes to churn delightful, useful things from a brew of art and science, ancient and evolving, old medicine and new cures. Join Velocity every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, only here on the Woohoo Radio Network.
It's words you never heard.
Harvey Mackay, author of the best-selling book, Use Your Head to Get Your Foot in the Door, includes job search secrets no one else will tell you. Harvey is a true ideopraxist. That's a person who puts ideas into practice. Harvey admits landing the right job can be more difficult than the job itself. And successful people can't have chronophobia. That's the fear of work. But in these economic times, it can be a necessity to make money any way you can. What's a word for using any means to make money? Quomo de quunquais. So what's the best job to have? Will Rogers once said, the best job in the country is the vice president. All he has to do is get up every day and ask, how is the president?
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my new app, Too Funny for Words.
And you're back. You're listening to Mission Unstoppable Radio. I am your host, Frankie Picasso. My guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Overall, and he is the co-founder for the World Pathfinder Children's Fund. We were talking about sustainability, talking about brain drain. You said it wasn't an issue in the rural areas. I imagine for poor families when children leave, it's almost a relief for them not to have to feed another mouth. And hopefully they send some money home.
Well, that's just it, is that when they're educated, and even with a brain drain type situation, is that when they do leave, and when you're traveling through the country, most of the advertisements that you see are advertisements for people on how to basically leave the country.
Oh, really?
Study abroad or work abroad, these types of things. So that is a thriving industry in the country. But when people leave and, get scholarships if they're fortunate enough, or they can get a job in the Middle East, they're getting paid well above minimum wage. So, the $3,000 that people typically live on per year, they're able to make that in a month, and they're sending it home. So, they still follow the cultural belief system that they take care of their parents in their elder years. So if they're educated and they go either outside of the country, or let alone just outside of the community, they're still going to be, bringing some money into the family and into the community as well.
Well, let's talk about how the World Pathfinder Children's has been set up. How have you set up the education for them?
Sure,
it's great.
Okay, so we've been in operation since 2009, and how we developed the organization was born out of a critique of the microfinancing industry in Nepal, and if we have some time, I can speak to that a little bit later. So effectively, what we're doing is we're focused on one particular area of Nepal, which is in the Annapurna Himalayan range, and we have some relationships with schools in that particular area. So we work with one school typically at a time. So we will receive notification from administration of a school letting us know that here's a list of some children that are on the verge of dropping out of school as a result of poverty. So our volunteers will then visit each family, assess their contacts, and see if both the family and the child want to continue with their education. And if they do, we agree to provide them with educational subsidies where we effectively pay their tuition until they graduate. And we ask the families for them to more take a pledge that once the child has graduated and started working, and at that point becoming financially independent and sustainable, we then ask for them to repay our organization, but we're not asking them to repay us monetarily. We ask them to assist two impoverished children that were in the same predicament as they were within their community.
Okay, so what grade level are we talking about?
We focus on primary and secondary school, so children between the ages of 5 and 17.
And so if these and how many children have been educated so far?
We're assisting 63 children.
63, that's awesome. And so if these kids go out into the workforce and they're fortunate enough to be somewhere between the $1,200 and $3,000 a year, that they're expected to give the $50 to another child to go to school. Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
2 other children.
Every year, or just for 8 years?
Until they graduate.
Until they graduate.
Yeah.
And how can they afford that then?
Well, if you're looking at it, it's we've assessed it to the point where it's sustainable for them to do it. Of course, it's somewhat of a burden, but it's not to the point where they're foregoing any sort of enjoyment they're able
so they
to,
still have a lifestyle is what
they still have
a
lifestyle. They're able to assist their families and themselves, save for retirement, purchase all the necessary things that we enjoy in our life, healthy food, some money for entertainment, and in addition to that, they pay an additional $100 per year for education. And from more of a cultural perspective is that my co-founder of this organization was one of these children that was from the rural part of the country that was on the verge of dropping out of school, and he was fortunate enough to receive some seed financing from some tourists, and he started his own business with his family. They had a retail outlet in Pokhara, Nepal, where they sold trekking equipment, and through the proceeds of those, he was able to put himself through primary and secondary school, as well as his 2 brothers, pay for his parents' retirement, put himself through post-secondary education, and as a result of the help that he's received, he's wanting to help other people. So I think that's something that is more of a cultural phenomenon. They're quite collectivist in Nepal, so they're community oriented, and when they acknowledge the fact that they've been helped and their circumstances have been alleviated, they're willing to assist other people. And that's what we found with our interactions with people that we're assisting.
So I think I have to mention that this is another project of the wonderful team of Jessica Van Thiel and Shivani Singh from Pathfinder, who have a vested interest in this, in Dr. Overall and the World Pathfinder Children's Fund, and helping to find some more money so that you can sustain this even better and longer and for more children, hopefully. What do you think it would take as far as we were going to talk about microfinancing, so let's talk about seed money for entrepreneurs. let's say you graduate from high school and say, hey, you know what? I've got a great idea for a business. Is that anywhere in your realm of where you'd like to go next?
That's something that we actually have considered. We've included it in some of our internal documents here of where we want to go. But to avoid more of a mission drift for us at this particular point in time, we are trying to get ourselves well established and get our model functioning within our areas that we're operating with in Nepal. And then, of course, when we have the graduates that are starting to emerge from our program and they're looking for seed financing to start their own businesses, we would obviously entertain that ourselves. And we've had some of the graduates approach us, and we're more funding it maybe out of our own pocket type thing, but to have it more sustainable and measurable, then that's something that we could bring in as well.
Interesting. So I know that Jessica didn't answer me, but how much money are you looking for? Or how much would you love to be able to bring in, or Pathfinder to bring in to your organization?
Well, we're currently assisting 63 children right now. So for us to be, for our operating capital per year, it's not a lot of money. It's a few $1,000s. But for us to grow this and scale this, several $1,000s, to throw numbers out there, we would be happy with 50,000 US, 100,000. Then we would be really able to focus on different communities and scale this program, because that sum of money can go so far in a country like Nepal, especially when their tuition is $50 per year, and when their per capita or the average income is $1,200 US, between 12 and 3,000, you can have some significant social impact in a country like Nepal.
I think we talked off air about there being about 30 million people in the country.
Yeah. Is
that right?
Yep.
So, between those 30 million and maybe their 4 kids, potentially, some of them are already being educated, obviously, but you could almost educate the entire country. And looking at, the United Nations Global Goals and how they want, to make sure that every girl is educated, I guess in the next 3 years or something like that. That would be quite achievable, really, given the cost of $50. So if somebody was looking to help and wanted to give some money, that would be a good thing. We're about to go to break. But quickly, before we do that, why don't you tell folks how they can get in touch with you if they do want to donate some money? We're going to reach a lot of people today, so maybe somebody has heart.
And we can receive donations on our website. The website's pathfindernepal.com. It's www.pathfindernepal.com, and we have one of the fields where you can donate through PayPal.
Excellent. Okay. Well, if you are thinking, gee, I'd like to help, why don't you go there right now and click that little button and donate and help a child get educated. Why not? We'll be right back.
Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso will continue right after these messages.
Stop.
It's words you never heard.
If you have a lot of spizzerinctum or the will to win, and you have a strong desire to be a part of your favorite sports team, the National Hockey League might be for you. Did you know that if both goalies on an NHL hockey team are injured, anyone at the game is eligible to step in and play the part? Teams have resorted to using their coaches, team owners, and even their web designers to fill in for injured goalies. It's as simple as slipping into your breezers or hockey pants. The original hockey puck was made out of frozen cow dung. The fastest puck shot on record was clocked at 114 miles per hour. And I'd like to take this opportunity to send out a special thanks to the men and women of our armed forces serving our country around the world.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Word.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, broadcasting quality programming to the world.
If you could live your life truly standing in a place of peace, joy, and abundance, wouldn't that make your heart soar? Now you can, with Lessons in Joyful Living, with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi, Mondays at noon Central. Kimberly Rinaldi, having created a highly successful coaching practice, now teaches Lessons in Joyful Living. She believes in empowering others and that through it, you have the ability to break through any and all barriers, thus allowing you to reach your greatest potential and joyfully step into your life's purpose. What used to take weeks, months, or even years, she can now teach you in a matter of hours with her programs. For more on Kim and her show, go to her website, KimberlyRinaldi.com. That's RINALDI.com. Then join us for Lessons in Joyful Living with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi.
Okay, and we're back. You're listening to Mission Unstoppable Radio. I am Frankie Picasso, and my guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Overall. And Jeffrey, you were talking a little bit about microfinancing. We let it go. Let's come back to that idea of microfinancing and how your model addresses some of the issues that we find in Nepal and maybe can be modeled again and taken elsewhere.
Yes. Microfinancing, if we're aware of the benefits from it, it's been extremely helpful in addressing rural poverty. The Grameen Bank is one of the most successful microfinancing institutions. Loans have been provided to 100 million people. They have repayment rates of 98%. And 68% of beneficiaries that have received microfinancing loans have been able to cross the poverty line. But with the microfinancing industry in Nepal, and I've worked quite closely with this in some of my own academic research, is that many of the microfinancing institutions that are in operation in Nepal don't follow the model that's been put forward by Grameen Bank, which is effectively providing these rural entrepreneurs, groups of 5 to 7 people. They will borrow small amounts of money, and then they'll start their businesses. And a really important aspect of the microfinancing initiative is providing these rural entrepreneurs with education. So you're providing them with a bit of business acumen. In Nepal, the microfinancing institutions don't do that. They don't offer any vocational training, which is an issue because people need to understand how to start their businesses. Mm-hmm. Another issue with microfinancing in Nepal is that their interest rates in Nepal are unregulated. So you have microfinancing institutions that charge 25 to 45% interest.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's effectively unsustainable. I mean, those are usurious interest rates. And a lot of these microfinancing institutions also have shareholders where they offer a 15% return on an investment as well as 25% dividends. So clearly from those numbers, you have the potential for people to get taken advantage of. Right. And speaking with microfinancing institutions, they're effectively run as a nonprofit organization, but they have pressure from shareholders to turn a profit. And speaking with some of the microfinancing recipients is that how microfinancing typically works is that if one of the recipients defaults on their loan, the other people that are in their group can't borrow additional funds. So there are instances of people getting bullied, and there's theft, and there's coercion. And one of the individuals told me that the microfinancing institution threatened to put her name in the local newspaper because she defaulted on her loan.
But not intentionally.
But not intentionally, because these people, based on my research of entrepreneurial failure rates, you look at studying entrepreneurs in North America, Western Europe, where these people are highly educated, have business acumen, business experience, their failure rates are 70 to 90%.
Wow.
So you go to a rural part of an unindustrialized nation where between 66% and 90% of the people are illiterate. They effectively have, they don't have a basic education. They don't have business acumen, really. So their failure rates are at that level, if not higher. And when these people fail, and they do, they're required to repay their loans.
What kind of money are we talking about?
They could be $25 per week, $100 a month type thing.
In total, like how much would they have borrowed, do you think?
Sometimes it's $50, which is a lot of money for people that are effectively on the poverty line, which is less than $2 per day. And if they have to pay interest of 25 to 45%, these people are in a worse situation.
That's like being raped.
Well, yeah, effectively that's what it is. I mean, you're trying to throw these people a life preserver, but you're throwing them a cinder block.
Right.
And so in our model, we only expect repayment, and they're not paying us. As I said, they're providing tuition to other children in their community. They only repay their loans, or effectively the loan of being provided with tuition, when they've succeeded. So when they've completed their education, when they've started working for a few years and become financially sustainable and independent, that's when they repay. Whereas with microfinancing, within the context of Nepal, regardless of success or failure, you have to repay your loan.
Right. Wow. And I bet they're encouraged to borrow money.
Well, with the problem is that these people often are, for the most part, don't have much education, and as a result, they don't have a global world view. And if somebody is offering to lend them some money, they borrow it. And the problem is from my research, 70% of the people that receive microfinancing loans are actually using them for consumption. They're not using them to start businesses. Yeah. So you have 70% of the people that aren't even starting businesses. They're paying
they're eating their
They're eating. And 25 to 45% interest. I mean, this isn't microfinancing. This is subprime lending and predatory. It's predatory lending, basically.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me sick.
Yeah, it's horrible. And because of the fact that these organizations have shareholders and they're receiving pressure from them, they essentially, from what the microfinancing recipients have told me, is that they basically go from house to house manipulating women to join the institution, basically.
Well, of course, if you're a woman and you are being sold into trafficking, or expected to, be in that industry to support your family, and you're probably not even supporting your family. You're supporting some John. And then somebody says, hey, I'm going to give you $50 and you can get out of that and you can feed your family. Now you don't have to do that. Of course you would want to do that, but now it's just one other person taking advantage of you.
Well, and that's just it. You have you're basically being exploited, and the problem is as I said, these people are on the verge of the poverty line, and they may only have to sustain themselves a couple of goats that they sell the milk from. And if they can't repay their loans, you have people that steal their goats. So now they can't afford to feed themselves because their sole source of income has been stolen, basically.
But what I love about education combined with entrepreneurship is the innovation that happens. And when you give somebody, some knowledge and help them open and expand their mind, innovation is just so fantastic. You just never know what they could start or do or become.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a small example. One of the students that we have assisted who's graduated with the money that they've earned participating in some of the tourism industry is that the family was able to purchase basically a shack that was falling down, and they fixed it up, and now they're using it as a guest house for trekkers that are wandering through this rural part of the country. So
like a hostel kind of place.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. And
what could they charge for that?
Well, you typically pay around $10 per night for just really basic accommodations. So they can easly charge 2 or 3 people $20, $30 per night.
Which is almost like their whole yearly income. What's the typical food? Like, what would you eat there?
They eat, it's called dalbat, which is essentially rice and cauliflower curried with potato, and they eat that in the morning and at night every day. That's the only thing they eat.
So they're vegetarian, but mostly?
Basically, yeah. They put lentils.
They don't eat the goat.
No, they don't. They won't eat the goat because that's their source of income with the milk.
Right.
Yeah.
And when the goat dies, do they make like drums from goat head and things like that? Is that an industry?
I haven't seen that. They sell a lot of trinkets and artisan type handcraft things that they can easily sell on the internet with some experience. And
you see knitted things from Nepal, don't you? Like the wool.
Oh, of course. They have wool, and carpets is a important industry in the country as well.
So if you've been listening to this broadcast, please go to www.pathfindernepal.com. Check out the website. Check out all the wonderful things that are going on over there through the World Pathfinder Children's Fund. And, give someone an education. This is one way that, we had a show on trafficking, human trafficking a few weeks ago. Here's another way to help stop, the source before it starts. Get them educated. Give them a way out. They say that educate a woman and, you educate a country, really. They're so amazingly good at being able to feed their families on very little. And it just, the innovation that comes from that is extraordinary, really. So education, it's always the key. We've got about a minute left. Jeffrey, is there something that you'd like to say before we go?
I would just like to echo your sentiments on that. Education is vital. Entrepreneurship is important, but for people to be successful entrepreneurs, they need to be educated first. And with what we're doing in Nepal, it's a sustainable model. It's a self-functioning organism, as I like to call it. And when the tuition is $50 for a child per year, that's effectively taking a friend out for lunch for a meal. Most of us in North America, Western Europe. So if anybody can help, that would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for being my guest. It was really nice to meet you. And thank you guys for listening and tuning in each and every week. We really appreciate you too. So we'll be back next week with another Mission Unstoppable. Jeffrey, best of luck.
Thank you.
Stories of people who, when the odds were against them, turned defeat into victory. You've been listening to Mission Unstoppable with Coach Frankie Picasso. See you next time, and always remember...
Don't stop.